Hey everyone, and welcome back to another devlog. Last time I introduced you to Puddle Pals, a cozy multiplayer game about water, rafts, and, of course, frogs. Since then, I've been knee deep in Unreal Engine, making the world feel more alive. That means better interactions, more dynamic environment, and most importantly, froggy features. So let's just jump right in. One of the first things I tackled was the interaction system. I started with a simple but effective setup where if the player walks up to an interactable object, a little UI prompt will appear. Once I press E, boom, interaction happens. With that system in place, my first test object was, of course, the lily pad. The idea was simple. Players should be able to hop onto a lily pad and use it to float across the water. Sounds easy, right? I quickly realised that getting a lily pad to properly support a player required a combination of my interaction system and the Unreal's buoyancy system that I had in Devlog 1, which, as it turns out, was more complicated than I expected. At first, the lily pads were either sinking like a rock or launching the players into orbit. Eventually though, I managed to wrangle the physics into submission, and now players can gracefully glide across the water as nature intended. With the interactions working, I moved on to the environment because, let's be real, my placeholder grey gym box level was not exactly a vibe. I wanted to start small, so I began by adding fireflies that spawn at night. These aren't just for decoration though, they actually react to the player's movement. If the player walks gently through the spawn, the fireflies will drift slow away, but if the player was to sprint through them at full speed, they scatter more in a panic. Next, I started blocking out an actual environment using references images I quickly found on Google and quickly sketched out in paint.net. Building the world in Unreal was surprisingly fun and way easier than I expected. I grabbed some rocks and placed them around a level, and suddenly it actually felt like an actual place. But the rocks and water alone don't scream cozy pond paradise. So I jumped into Unreal's built-in modelling tool and created my own grass models. Once completed, I tossed little low polygrass everywhere, instantly making the world feel more like a garden. And just like that, Mojo and his pals finally have a home. Well, almost, because something was still missing. The day and night cycle. Now, I already have a nice sky, but at night, it's just black. No stars, no moon, no cozy atmosphere. So I took Unreal's already built-in sky system blueprint, copied its setup, and adjusted a lot of the mass and material to create a fully dynamic night and day cycle. So now, the sun rises and sets smoothly, the stars and moon come out at night, and the world feels more alive now. Sure, this might not be the most exciting feature for some people, but for me, it's the little things like this that really bring a game to life. Alright, real talk. No frog game is complete without one crucial feature, floppy physics. So I set out to give Mojo, my main frog character, a proper ragdoll system. Now in theory, yet again, this should be easy, right?
Holy Jesus! What is that?
So I had to redo the rigging process, which thankfully wasn't as painful this time around compared to the first time, as I knew how to use Blender a lot better now. After some trial and error, success! Mojo can now flop around like the glorious amphibian he was always meant to be. Next, Walkable Lily Pads. Now that I was working on floating lily pads, I wanted to make them feel more dynamic. Instead of just sitting still in the water, I wanted them to bend and tilt slightly based on where the player was standing on the lily pad, react naturally to the movement, instead of falling like a static platform. This meant tweaking their buoyancy physics even further, but eventually I got it working. But I wasn't done with lily pads just yet. With the smaller lily pads, I wanted the player to be able to control that movement, depending on where the character was facing. Essentially letting them navigate across the water like a mini raft. At first, the movement controls were unpredictable. Sometimes the lily pad would move as expected, other times it would spin wildly in circles like a confused bumper car. But after many tweaks, I finally got the controllable lily pads working. Yes! Now players can hop on the lily pad, paddle their way through the pond. So what's next? Well, that's probably enough chaos for one devlog. If you've made it this far, congratulations, you have the patience of a saint. Moving forward, I'll be working on more animations to bring Mojo to life and even more cuter, more interactable objects, and maybe even a multiplayer game mode. Thanks for watching, and if you have any ideas, suggestions, or even some frog puns, drop them in the comments. Thank you.